Hi there Waltoneers, I'm Jack and this is of course DSNY Newscast, and before we get started be sure to go ahead and subscribe down below if you're new to the channel, hit that notification bell if you've already subscribed and would like to receive notifications, and now with all of that YouTuber stuff out of the way, let's get straight into it. As it was back in February 2018 that the then Disney CEO Bob Iger announced an ambitious $2.5 billion investment into Disneyland Paris, which would see a multi-year expansion to Walt Disney Studios Park of around 13 acres, and would include all new lands themed to Marvel, Frozen and Star Wars. And throughout 2018 and 2019, things seemed to be progressing quite well, with all of the normal regulatory processes being fulfilled within the preliminary planning stages. But then 2020 hit. And for a considerable duration within fiscal year 2020 and into 2021, the only Disney resorts that consistently stayed open after reopening were Shanghai Disneyland and Walt Disney World. And in the case of Disneyland Paris, it reopened on July 15th, 2020, to then only close 3 months later on October 29th. And it remained closed until only recently on June 17th, 2021. And understandably, all of this uncertainty took an economic toll of $6.9 billion on the company in 2020, and further hurt the bottom line in the beginning of 2021. But despite this, Disney has continued to push forward with the majority of previously announced Disney Park projects around the world. From the Frozen Land being built in Hong Kong Disney, Zootopia Land in Shanghai, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway in Disneyland, and not to mention the plethora of projects at Walt Disney World such as Tron, Guardians of the Galaxy, the Epcot Transformation, and the Galactic Star Cruiser. So then that logically brings us to the question of where does this leave the Disneyland Paris expansion in the big scheme of things, considering it's such a large investment? And well, Disney has remained relatively quiet, not making any specific mention of the expansion for quite a while, instead focusing on the immediate future of the resort with articles and media attention on the opening of Cars Route 66, Hotel New York The Art of Marvel, and the upcoming Avengers campus. But last year, in April 2020, Disneyland Paris did confirm to publication Le Parisien that work on the expansion had been halted, but not cancelled. And this was clearly evident, as we can see in this Google Earth satellite image taken in March 2020, that there was very early site preparation underway. And then later we saw in these aerial images from DLP report in July and September of 2020 that not much at all had visibly progressed, meaning that the construction pause was in place from the March 2020 closure to the second closure in October 2020. But then in early 2021, aerial photography from a range of sources such as DLP Report, Disneyland Paris Works, and Alexandre Roger Photography showed that the construction had resumed on the site preparation and land grading. And this may not look like a big deal, but this is the clearest sign yet that the expansion is still moving forward. But what we're exactly looking at is the foundational footprint of a Frozen themed area, with this graded site showing the same outline of the Frozen Ever After attraction show building that we saw in the blueprints last year. As in February of 2020, I did a whole video on this topic which I'll link to in the description below. But for a quick recap, this Frozen land, tentatively titled as Arendelle World of Frozen, will include a boat ride attraction similar in layout and scene progression to that of Frozen Ever After in Epcot, but it will have modified ride vehicles and possibly changes to the narrative to accommodate the story of Frozen 2 as well. And the land will also have a Frozen themed table service restaurant, boutiques and shops, and a meet and greet with Anna and Elsa inside the Arendelle Castle. And to disguise the attraction building's exterior, there will be a 134-foot tall recreation of Elsa's Ice Palace that will act as a new icon. And that's important, as the Ice Palace will hopefully draw guests down this main street that takes inspiration from the Champs-Élysées and around a brand new 4-acre lake that will be home to daytime entertainment and nighttime spectaculars, similar to World of Colour and Epcot's fireworks spectaculars on World Showcase Lagoon. Although work on the sizable body of water with backstage infrastructure is still yet to even be prepped for preliminary construction, as there is still a car park where the lake lake will be. But in terms of the time frame, before the pandemic, the construction of Arendelle and the lake were targeting a 2023 opening, but most likely that has now been delayed until the second half of 2024, which could mean the beginning of fiscal year 2025, which begins in October for Disney. However, that's not all regarding the Walt Disney Studios expansion. As originally mentioned as part of the project was the addition of a Star Wars themed land that was set to be complete by around 2025. However, from the current state of construction, this is looking increasingly doubtful, as we can see that no such land grading or even site prep has even begun for the attraction area. And in case you were wondering, this was likely to have been a clone of Rise of the Resistance, as not only do the permits filed in 2019 show that the building's shape and layout match that of Rise of the Resistance in Disneyland and Walt Disney World, but also the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run attraction would have been a logistical nightmare because of the translation barriers between guests within an interactive ride experience. But given that the construction has not started and no permits have been specifically filed for the attraction, many believe that this Star Wars land may have been cut as a result of the pandemic. However, curiously, even before the pandemic, in September 2019, D23.com published an article about exciting new additions coming to Disneyland Paris in the future that referenced the Frozen-themed area under the time frame of TBD, but omitted any mention whatsoever of the Star Wars land. And so clearly, even before the pandemic's economic impact, Disney were re-evaluating their approach to this Star Wars area. Perhaps not to make it a clone of Galaxy's Edge, but instead giving it a timeline closer to the original trilogy, so that the land could maybe feature the Mandalorian. But with Imagineering possibly going back to the drawing board, this would also explain why no extra concept art was provided for the area, unlike what we've seen with Frozen. However, given the financial pressure that the pandemic has caused, I don't think that the area has been cut altogether, but it's probably been pushed back even further than that of Frozen, which means that there will be a vacant expansion space on this side of the lake for quite some time. But now let's move on to a bit of good news, as the first phase of Walt Disney Studios Park's transformation is set to open next year, as Avengers Campus is slated for a 2022 opening, only delayed by 1 year from its original target date. And this will include the Web Slingers interactive Spider-Man attraction, an Ant-Man themed table service restaurant, an Avengers HQ meet and greet, and for the first time ever, an Iron Man themed roller coaster, which I previously discussed in great detail back in June. So to conclude, the future is bright for Disneyland Paris, as Disney is still pressing ahead with most of a multi-year expansion, albeit delayed by 12 to 18 months. And we'll just have to await further word in the coming years about the fate of the Star Wars themed expansion area and what new experiences it will hold. But now it's over to you, the Waltoneers. I would like to know, what are your thoughts and opinions regarding the Walt Disney Studios expansion, and if you could bring any other land themed to any other IP to that 4-acre lake area on an expansion pad, then what would it be and why? And of course, don't forget to put the timestamp for where the hidden Mickey appeared somewhere in today's video, along with your suggestion or your comment, so therefore that way you're in the chance to win those official DSNY Newscast enamel pins. And congratulations to this Waltoneer here for winning this suggestion from a previous video where I was talking all about the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser that's going to be opening at Walt Disney World next year. And so that's it for today, so be sure to go ahead and subscribe down below if you're new to the channel, hit that notification bell, and if you've enjoyed today's video, then be sure to give this video a massive thumbs up, as it really does help this channel out. And I've been Jack, you've been you, and I'll see you real soon.